Welcome to Driving the Lane with Randy Kraayenbrink and Chuck Rowe, a podcast presented by News Talk 1540 KXEL. Now, Driving the Lane.
Welcome to Driving the Lane. Randy Kraayenbrink, Chuck Rowe, the show where we talk about mostly one thing and one thing only, and that is
Panther basketball.
Now, it's important that we remind you that even though we are the official UNI basketball show for News Talk 1540 KXEL, our comments may not reflect the feelings of our friends at UNI. However, Randy is a former player, and I bid on some Rally in the Valley items already. Did you do that yet?
I have not. I didn't even know they were out there.
Okay.
Thanks for promoting it.
It's up there already. So,
Yes.
so this show is as official as it's going to get.
Love
We
it.
also want to let you know that portions of the show can be heard on KXEL, with the entire show found on their website. As always, we have a great show for everyone this week. And here's the key, though, Randy. This is the last show of the season. This is the finale.
It is. It is. Sad moment, but it's time to say goodbye and then let the new season begin.
There you go. So we have former players and current NBA staff members, Klint Carlson, Paul Jesperson joining us. We have the Midwest Studies Group Nonprofit of the Week, then finishing off with the Financial Architects Quote of the Week. Let's get started. So, Randy, we have been trying to figure this out for a very long time. It's really tough because both of these guys have legit jobs now. They can't just break away in the evenings any longer or in the mornings. It's really hard to nail these guys down because they have real jobs. But joining us today, former players turned NBA gurus. Drum roll, please. We have Paul Jesperson and Klint Carlson joining us from the Atlanta Hawks and the Charlotte Hornets. Thanks for joining us today, guys.
No problem. Thanks for having us.
Thanks for having us.
Now, to be honest, when setting up this week, it was a lot harder to get Paul scheduled than it was Klint. Can't quite figure out why. Any thoughts on that, guys? Or
Well, we had to send those guys back to Charlotte a couple days ago.
It was a tough game, but hopefully we'll be playing at this time next year.
now, in all honesty, I have to tell you, Klint, I kind of mentioned this to you before, but the Charlotte Hornets have always been like my second favorite team. Now, my favorite team, everyone knows, is that G League team known as the New York Knicks. They're number one, but the Hornets always been my second favorite. Long story, even longer. Before my Iowa days, I grew up in the East Coast. Georgetown was always my favorite college team. Alonzo Mourning was and still is my favorite all-time player. He ended up playing for the Hornets. There you go. Charlotte's always been my second favorite team because of that. The Hawks, on the other hand, they kind of hurt the Knicks last year in the playoffs, so I'm sure Paul Jesperson was somewhat of the reason why. So I'm a little having a bit of a hard time with him on the show, but that's okay. We like you anyways, I guess. But why don't you guys give a little bit of an update of what you're currently doing with your respective teams?
Go ahead, Clint.
Well, currently I'm the assistant video coordinator. It's a lot of just breaking down film. Obviously during our games, I kind of just live code those as they go. Me and another guy have the same title, have the same job. So a lot of film work, but then there's also a lot of on-court stuff, which is cool. We're on the court for, every workout, every practice day. It's really fun to be able to, get to interact with the coaches and the players. One of the highlights is any low minute guys or guys that, the young guys or the guys that don't play a lot, they try to keep them in shape. So, whether it's 4 or 5 guys, then they bring up the video room to either play like 4-on-4, 5-on-5, even down to like 1-on-1 or 2-on-2 if there's just not that many guys to play. So that's actually a really cool experience. You still it's part of the coaching staff, but at the same time, I still get to run up and down the court a little bit.
Yeah, I started similar to Clint. I came in as assistant video coordinator and did that for kind of my first 2.5-ish years, and then slowly transitioned more to like player development, having specific guys to work with and putting together developmental plans that they can work on, and stuff we do during practice with them, post-practice, pre-practice. We call them vitamins in the NBA. It's basically like a 15 to 20 minute slot, either pre or post-practice, where you get with your guys, and work on some stuff that they need to get better at. So that's kind of what my full-time role is this year. More player development coach is the title. So yeah, it's been a fun journey these last 4 years, and I'm sure Klint could kind of say the same thing.
So for the two of you then, obviously, like Klint mentioned before, you both get the opportunity to maybe play with the players, maybe do a little one-on-one or even 5-on-5 once in a while. So the question is, have you had the chance to showcase some of your moves, and what's the best story where you got to teach a lesson to one of the players maybe?
What do you got, Klint?
Well, yeah, I mean, it's always a good time, obviously, to just get your competitive juices going again. Obviously, you get to play. Anytime you get to play, it's a fun time. I don't really try to show off too much. I'm more out there to try to get the guys better. I always tell the video room, it's not about me, it's not about us, it's about those guys. So every now and again, though, I'll get a fast break dunk or something like that. Jim will go crazy because it's a video guy dunking, and but it's definitely not like it used to be.
Yeah, you're kind of running scout team when you're doing that in a sense. So it's similar to when a young guy comes into college, freshman, sophomore, and those guys aren't playing, or a red shirt comes in and those guys are running scout team every practice. You kind of have a green light to do whatever you want. You're trying to give those guys a good look at what the opponent you're going to play is doing offensively. So you kind of try to replicate tendencies and stuff like that, but you have a green light. So you're playing with the utmost confidence. You're letting shots fly, and it is good, like Klint said, to kind of get those competitive juices going a little bit. And usually the guys get into it a little bit. So it's definitely a fun part of the job.
Yeah. Randy, and notice how they didn't mention any names, who they scored on or anything like that. They want to be very careful about what they say in public.
Yeah, absolutely. So a question for you guys is, so like the stepping stones, right? So it's clear that the both of you probably want to stay in basketball at some form or level. So like, what's the next stepping stone, or what's the progression, maybe climbing up that ladder of the NBA or even basketball, period?
I think it's kind of the positions that Klint and I both started in, that a video role where you really learn the league, you learn tendencies of the league, you learn trends of the league. That's kind of like your graduate school of basketball in a sense. You're learning a ton, you're asking a lot of questions to the coaches, and in the meantime, you're kind of developing your own philosophy while you're doing that. And then it kind of goes player development coach to assistant coach. And then you kind of work your way up on the bench, whether that's back of the bench to start, front of the bench. And then that's kind of the route most people see. But the NBA is such a different kind of beast in the corporate world, in that there's guys who go from the video room, you hear about them, to, their team has a ton of success. And all of a sudden next year, those guys are assistant coaches. So it's not like a thing that every team follows the same plan of attack with those guys. It's just kind of luck of the draw, and you're in the right situation at the right time. And the staff you work for really believes in you, and trust your hard work, and trust you know what you're talking about.
Nick Nurse is probably the most well-known, but there's some other guys as well that have gone through the UNI program. Do you ever get to meet up with those guys?
Obviously, when Toronto came to town, or we went to Toronto, I tried to run into Nick Nurse just to meet him, and because I've never met him before, but I have not been able to do that yet. But I don't know about Paul, but I talked to John Little quite a bit. He's in the G League with the Bucks affiliate. So I talk to him probably once every couple weeks. He puts me into contact with like his Milwaukee guys, and then I'll run into them. The funny thing is, I've run into a lot of guys that we used to play in college, and like we'll be warming up pregame, and I'll look down on the other end of the floor and see somebody that kind of looks familiar, and then obviously I run into like in Milwaukee a former player for Loyola, works for them now. So then I just found him on Twitter, messaged him. I said, "Was that you down on the other side of the court?" Just because I didn't have any time to run down. He goes, "Yeah, did I see you down on the other side of the court?" So it's kind of funny how you just make those connections. You just kind of see faces that, look familiar. And then that's just, kind of how you build those relationships, right? It kind of just starts just by running into each other, and then, just keep talking and keep staying in touch.
Yeah, kind of to echo Clint, obviously Jay Litt, close with him, Sean Sweeney in Dallas, talked to him when we play the Mavs. And then I don't know if you guys remember Brogy. He's with the Cleveland Cavaliers. So every time we kind of play those teams, meet out at half court while we're warming up our guys, they're warming up their guys, and you'll have a 5 to 10 minute conversation. So it's good to catch up with those guys. And, everyone always asks how Coach Jake is doing, if you've talked to Coach Jake, if you've talked to anybody on the staff. So it's always good to meet up with the UNI guys.
And I know you got to play it cool having an NBA job. You can't look like a fanboy out there when you're doing your thing. But when you're in Atlanta, I mean, the first two names that usually pop up to people are going to be Dominique or Spud Webb, and then in Charlotte, there's this little guy named Michael Jordan, maybe. Do you guys have you come across any of these all-time greats, and what was that experience like if you did?
Yeah. Neat travels with us every trip. He's still a big part of the Hawks. He's well-known, obviously, around Atlanta, well-respected around the NBA. So we see him pretty frequently. But, I mean, it's kind of like you're working a job, so you get used to seeing these guys, and they just are guys now, But it was cool when I first got the job to, see some of these guys that are NBA greats, or some of these young guys coming up here who are super successful in the league, and you kind of take a step back at times, and you're like, we're working with the best of the best. So that is a cool part of the job. But like I said, you're kind of here, you're in it, so you don't really, I guess, grasp that stuff on a day-to-day level.
It was funny, actually. My first day here, 2 summers ago, came into the gym, and at that time we were like COVID testing every day. So, I got COVID tested, and I was waiting to be able to, get my results and come back in. And then MJ pulled up, just kind of walked by everybody, got his test. They had a special place for him to wait. But then later that day, he was just walking through the hallway. I was walking through the hallway and just passed by, and he was walking with one of the other front office guys. So, they introduced us. I said, hello, Mr. Jordan, I'm Clint. Gave him a fist pound, and then just kind of kept walking. I don't want to take up too much of his time. He's got more important things to do than talk to the assistant VC,
Well, you didn't ask for a selfie on the spot?
Yeah, no.
I got this guy named Randy. He would like me to send a picture of it. Yeah, here you go.
Well, people obviously have this picture in their heads of all the glitz and glamour with the job because of all the great things that you're talking about, but it's probably really stressful at the same time. Maybe you can talk about some of the stressful parts of the job that people maybe don't think about.
Obviously working in the video room, you're working with a lot of technology, a lot of computers. During games, it's like high intense situations where if something goes wrong, you're going to have to be able to fix it right away. And obviously I'm not like the biggest computer guy around. You got to try to learn as much as you can in a quick sense. But at the end of the day, like, everybody in there is kind of a basketball guy, right? We're all in there trying to just work our way up and do what we need to do now. So anytime there's something wrong with a computer or an edit or anything that any technology mishaps, those are pretty stressful, because you're trying to figure out what's wrong and fix it so that the guys can either watch their film or the coaches can put together their edits. Or if it's a game, obviously guys coming in at halftime, you got to have that edit up, like, ready to go, because you only have 15 minutes to get everything done that you want to get done and to show them what you want to show them. So that stuff can get pretty intense. That's obviously the biggest one. Otherwise, it's just, everyday little things of just making sure you're, always on top of what you're doing, getting the coaches what they need, getting the players what they need, and just making sure you're not forgetting anything.
And what about you, Paul?
I wouldn't say it's stressful, but you're getting trusted with kind of these guys' futures. You draft a first-round draft pick, and if he's one of your guys you're working with, they're trusting you that you know what you're talking about, that you're going to ask the right questions to the staff, that you are doing your research and knowing what this kid needs to work on. You know enough about what you guys are trying to do and other players that you need to have this kid ready to play as he gets into year 2, 3, 4. So I wouldn't say it's stressful. I would say it just makes you be on top of your stuff. Kind of like Klint was saying about, you come in each day, you need to have your stuff, on lock. You need to know what needs to be done. You need to have it done by a specific time. It's kind of that same process when you're putting together developmental plans for these guys. So I wouldn't say it's stressful. It kind of ups your level of focus and makes you be on your A game kind of all the time. Because if you take your foot off the pedal, you usually are going to suffer later down the road when asked a question about where this guy is or why can't this guy do this yet. Well, we've been working on A, B, and C. We haven't got to D yet. It's a process. So I wouldn't say, like I said, I wouldn't say it's stressful. It just requires you to kind of be on your A game at all times.
I find it kind of crazy when you watch, athletes come from college into, well, even from high school to college and then from college to the professional level, how much like even the video room / the player development, which both of you guys are obviously a huge role in, how much they improve from one year to the next. And that's got to be kind of cool watching it happen on video, and then obviously talking to the individuals about how to improve your 3-point shooting or whatever it is that they want to work on. But you think that at a certain level you can't improve anymore, but obviously you all help them improve that much more. So I guess I really don't have a question. There's more of a comment, but like specifically, is it that they shoot 1,000 more shots a day that they become better? They watch themselves on video doing things. Maybe talk a little bit about that part of it.
I think it's, you definitely have rep schemes for these guys when it comes to on the court stuff. But for me, it's all about like intentional reps. Like we can go out there and shoot 1,000 shots, half speed, or not focusing on the little details that are going to make you a better shooter. So everything kind of with my emphasis is we're intentional about what we're doing out here. We're not wasting our time. We're not practicing missing shots. We're practicing making shots. And if you miss, but you're doing it the right way over time, that's going to kind of work itself out and you'll be able to make shots at a higher level. Film wise, you're watching a ton of film with these young guys because unless you come in as a high draft pick, like a top 10 lottery pick type of guy, and you're playing on a bad team, typically those guys aren't playing. They're not contributors right away. So like if you get a guy in the 20s, a guy in the 30s, second round pick, he's on a better team, playoff team, maybe 8 seed, through 5, whatever it may be. So he's not getting a ton of time typically. So when he does get time, or he's down in the G League and you're watching his games down there, you've got to bring that stuff back to him and say, listen, this is how this is going to correlate when you're up here. This is what we're trying to accomplish defensively. This is where your body positioning needs to be every possession. So you're watching a lot of film just as much as you're doing the on-court stuff. You're grabbing these guys, pulling them to the side, and you're watching a ton of clips with them because they don't have the luxury of playing 30 minutes a game right now. So any little bit of playing time they do have, you need to make sure you're watching with those guys so that they're prepared for when they do play that 30-minute, 25 to 30 minutes a game.
Just how much these guys want to get better, how bad they want to get better. Obviously, it's their full-time job. Everybody knows that, but these dudes are really dedicated, and kind of what Paul said, they might not get a lot of playing time, but they are in the gym a lot. And they're doing it the right way, like he said. Whether it's even just a 30, 45 hour workout, but they're going hard, they're going game speed. They're not just working on offense. They're not just working on their 3-point shot. They're also, at least hearing or scheming a little bit of our defensive stuff. So they're trying to learn, our system, the whole game of basketball. And then it is kind of cool to see, they'll work on something and maybe, they don't get it right away, or they're not doing it like 100% correct. But then it's just one rep that it does, like they do it perfectly. And then you just see them take off with it. And then to also, go on what Paul said about the film is they'll go through a workout and then they'll watch 10, 12 clips of something, and you can just kind of see that it answers their questions of, why am I working on this, or why are we doing this or that, or A, B, or C, right? And then you can see it on film and be able to back it up and say, this is why we're doing it. But it just comes down to how much they want to get better and how bad they want to get better.
Let me transition over to the Panthers for a moment. Two guys that we definitely know are done playing at UNI because they graduated. That's going to be Taiwan and Trey. What's the toughest thing about leaving the Panthers after that final game that you've experienced?
I think it's kind of the reality. Reality kind of sets in, like, I'm not about to have another summer here with workouts, with playing pickup. I'm not about to be in the locker room with those same guys anymore. That was the toughest part for me. Obviously, the playing, and you play in big games, you play in the NCAA tournament. Those are unforgettable memories, but it's those little things like the 15 minutes before practice when you're hanging out with the team in the locker room and guys are joking around, and that type of stuff is kind of the hardest to walk away from. And just the sheer getting to compete every day, like, that's what I miss the most. It's different when you're coaching, I guess, because you're not out there. It's hard to explain for me, but it's just the competitive juices. I haven't found anything yet that is as enjoyable as playing. Like, this is definitely number 2. This is the closest I've found to being able to replicate that, but being able to compete, being able to be around your teammates every day, like, that's the stuff that I miss the most.
Yeah, for sure. I would agree with Paul. Is just being around the guys. Obviously, the coaching staff is great there. Just missing, the time that you got to spend with everybody. It's just something you're never going to get back. And then a little bit just for me is, obviously Cedar Falls is only about 20 minutes away from Waverly. So, I was kind of done. And once I was done with that, it was like, well, where do I go to next? And it's not going to be here. So, I was kind of at that time leaving home after college. Right. So that was a little bit of a tough pill to swallow for me, but obviously, it was good. It worked out. And then the other thing that Paul said was, just competitiveness. I think me and him are pretty alike in the fact that we just like to compete. I found a little bit of got to fix it with a little bit of golf. And I know, like, I'm better than Paul at golf, so he doesn't really. It's just one thing, finding little games, or, luckily I still get to play with the guys 2 or 3 times a week. But in the summers, like, all the guys are taking a little break now. So I got to figure out how to compete here in the next 2 weeks. And I've played a couple rounds of golf so far. So,
I heard your boss likes to golf a little bit. Maybe you can make a wager with him.
I think that might be a bit above my price range.
Yeah, that's his bets are like his annual salary.
Yeah.
Anyways,
Per hole.
well, we talked to John Little earlier in the season, and he mentioned that because of COVID rules, there was a point in time where people are like G leaguers were getting called up constantly, and it was like 10-day contracts here and there. If you guys keep on kicking butt and doing a lot of dunks during those fast breaks during the scrimmages, who knows? Maybe a 10-day contract is in your future.
I don't know about Paul, but I might be a little bit out of shape for that.
But obviously, you guys had a great time at UNI. You talked about the things that you missed. If you could turn back time during the COVID years where they gave everyone an extra year, would you have played an extra year?
Shoot, I was in college 5 years. I don't know if I'd have been asked to come back. No, that would have been a tough one. That would have been a tough one, honestly. I think a lot of it would come down to who was coming back with me. If, Wes and Bo were both like, hey, let's give this thing one more round and see what we can do. Obviously, it'd be tough to say no to that, but I mean, 5 years in college that's a long time. So I would have been coming back for my 6th year, obviously with that 5th year being kind of my redshirt year when I transferred to UNI. But That'd have been a tough decision to make, and I don't think I would be able to give you a reliable answer unless I actually had to sit in that seat and make that decision.
And to be fair, the point is, and tell me if I'm wrong here, is that the basketball would have been great. I'm guessing it's the extra year of classes that maybe doesn't sound as tempting.
Yeah, I mean, that doesn't sound very fun, but I mean, you'd be able to pursue probably or at least start some sort of graduate program, which is a bonus. Anytime you can get some free school, I think that's something to seriously consider. But yeah, that'd have been a tough decision to make.
Yeah, I'm glad I didn't have to come across that situation because, like Paul said, like I was also in school for 5 years. Coming back to play, just a 6-year basketball would have been great, but there's, so many more things you have to take into mind. Especially, for these two guys, especially going through it now, is whether or that went through it last year, whether or not you want to start your professional career or not. So it's a little bit of a give and take. I'm in the same boat as Paul. I don't know what I would have decided. It would have been nights of on the phone with my mom and my dad trying to figure it out, I'm sure.
Well, now that you're in the world of the NBA, where free agency is just part of life, it's just how it is. It's not personal, it's business, right? When people make those contract decisions. But what are your initial thoughts on basically free agency hitting the college game, where all the transfer portal rules are much more relaxed?
That one's tough because I do see a positive in athletes receiving compensation. I think that, I don't know, I don't want to say it wasn't well thought out, but I mean, there's different ways now that these guys can basically, through donors and boosters and all that stuff, where I thought it was kind of going to be a thing where you could get sponsorships from certain businesses, but now it sounds more like some boosters can throw together a pot of money and basically pay these kids to come here and be like, hey, come to Northern Iowa, or come to Iowa State, or come to Iowa. And now it's turning into who can pay the most money to get these kids. I think that's a dangerous road to go down. There's got to be a balance. I don't have an answer where that balance comes from, but I think that there should be some compensation. But I don't agree in necessarily the full kind of money coming from every direction. Let's get this kid to come here, because I think it gives mid majors and low majors, it's a rough deal for them, because some of these kids who are maybe over recruited or recruited to a level that's a little too high, or maybe mid majors who have a little bit of a budget, a little bit higher of a budget than other ones, are going to get a lot of these kids. I think that's tough. It's going to be tough. It's going to be interesting to see where college basketball goes kind of the next 3 to 4 years, and if more rules come into effect or what happened to these kids. But I mean, that's not the only thing. Right now, kids are going and playing overseas and bypassing college altogether. They're doing the G League stuff. They're doing all sorts of different things. So that in between high school basketball and professional basketball is getting more and more interesting now. Just the different avenues where these guys can go and play. And I don't, you can't fault them for any decision they make. These kids are 17, 18 years old trying to make decisions. And I'm sure if some of these kids are like, hey, here's $500,000, come play here, or skip college altogether. Like, you're a 17 or 18-year-old kid. Your parents might have a little guidance in that, or I'd hope they would. But I mean, that's a lot of money to walk away from when you're a young kid. And I'm sure that's tough for some of those kids to say, no, I'm going to go to school for 4 years and see what happens. So I don't know. What do you think, Klint?
I just think, first and foremost, how crazy it is that it's just a completely different landscape from when we were in college, which was only, 4, 5, 6 years ago. It's like a completely different situation. And I don't fully know everything about like the NIL deals or all that, so I don't want to speak out of turn. I'm kind of in the same boat as Paul. There's got to be some middle ground or a way to make it fair. And I'm sure everybody that's involved is trying to work that out right now. But in reference to the transfer portal, I saw saw somewhere on the internet, like there was like 1,000 names in the transfer portal. And I still don't really fully understand what the transfer portal is. Obviously like our season, I wasn't really reading about college hoops as much as I would like to. I tried to follow UNI as much as I could, but we were pretty busy during our season, so I didn't really read up too much on all that stuff. But I would hope that, the kids are making pretty informed decisions, because I can't imagine if there's 1,000 names in the transfer portal that all 1,000 kids are going to be able to find a spot to go. And so I just, it's nice that they kind of have that freedom to be able to make those choices and make decisions, throughout their 4 or 5 years of college. But I also think there's got to be some type of middle ground in that too, because, and I don't know the rules, so, correct me if I'm wrong, but, I don't know if a kid could transfer, 1 year, not like it there, then transfer again, then transfer again. Could he play for 4 or 5 different schools in 4 or 5 different years? I don't know those rules. So, but if that's the case, I think there's got to be, some type of middle ground to be reached, just to at least keep some consistency.
Now, Paul, I know you transferred, of course. Let's talk about both of you being at UNI right now, or really any college team. And you're one of the players that stay on the team. Do you think in the future that players that are putting themselves in the portal and thinking about going somewhere else, do you think that's going to hurt things like team loyalty, bonding, friendships, et cetera? Or is that something that fans are just worried about?
I'm sure there's some of that in different programs. I think a lot more of that is fan driven, because I think these kids develop relationships, obviously, with staffs, with their teammates, things like that. And all these guys got different reasons why they're leaving, whether it's playing time, whether it's they want some more shots, whether they can't get off the bench, whatever it may be. They don't get along with the coaches. I don't know what their reasons are, but it's hard to fault these kids for upping and leaving a program. And I think that the fans kind of hype the situation at times. I'm sure there's some teammates in different programs that, do get a little bit upset, but I think for the most part, a lot of those guys probably understand where their teammate is coming from and why they're leaving. So I don't think the majority of teams are like, man, this guy's leaving, I'm never talking to this guy again, type of thing. I don't believe that. But I could be wrong. I've been gone from college a long time, and like Klint said, landscape has changed. But I just look back at my situation when I left Virginia. One of my best friends, I'm still best friends with him. I still talk to a majority of the guys on that team. I still talk to some people on that staff, some of the coaches. So I think that, like I said, to kind of go back, there might be some initial resentment, but I think as time goes and time kind of grows and heals, and I think that for the most part, those kids kind of get the fans kind of hype that stuff up. But
so between your time of leaving Virginia and coming to UNI, your teammates weren't kicking your luggage out to the curb saying, get out of here, sell out, or anything like that, right?
No. At the time, when that happens, I'm sure just like every other team, guys try to talk you out of leaving, and, get you to stay and say it's in your best interest, our best interest type thing. But after I made the decision, there was never any of that. Those guys were supportive. That staff was supportive. So there was no hard feelings from either side.
Well, besides, Noah and AJ, everyone knows what's going on there. Let's get to the other bit of big news that kind of hit the UNI news, I think, sometime last week. Klint, would love to get your opinion first on what you think about Erik Crawford making his way to Iowa State and what Erik brings to the table that's going to be missed at UNI.
Yeah, Coach Crawford was my guy when I was at UNI. So, me and him would sit down and he'd have clips for me to watch. Obviously, if anytime I wanted to, get extra shots or workouts, I was working with him. So I built a very strong relationship with him. And I think, one of the biggest pieces that, I appreciated the most was just the way he, connected with me and the ability to build that relationship. Obviously, a former player, I mean, even when I was in college, he was still, one of the best players on our team as a coach. I mean, the guy could hoop, but, and just his dedication, his knowledge base, and then obviously just the relationships that he can build with kids. He was, I liked everybody on the staff, but he was, one of my favorites just because I got to be with him every day and get closer to him. And I wish him luck, and I think he's going to be able to be successful, wherever he ends up.
Yeah, I completely agree with Klint. I thought Croft's one of his strongest kind of attributes as a coach was his ability to connect with everybody. He made guys feel welcome. He made guys feel confident. And I think that's a huge thing when a coach can instill confidence in players. And he had the ability to do that. He was kind of like, I viewed him as just kind of like a do-it-all type of guy. Like you'd see him doing some film stuff. He'd be on the court. He'd be coaching a little bit of offense. He'd be talking a little bit of defense. So, there's big shoes to fill there, obviously, with him leaving. But kind of to echo Klint, he's going to be successful where he is just because of the type of person he is on and off the court, and the level of respect that guys have for him.
Well, Klint, you're always going to be known for that monster MVC tourney time your junior year. And Paul, obviously that half-court shot. I mean, that's what you guys are going to be known for in UNI lore. But those are highlights. What do you hope that Panther fans remember you for your entire career, besides maybe your hot yoga skills?
Go ahead, Klint.
I forgot, about that hot yoga stuff. That was good. Twice a week. Randy, you still doing that 3 or 4 times a week?
Still doing it.
There we go.
Yep.
It was never good when you were in the hot yoga room and it was hot and you walk out and 90-degree humidity felt cool. That's
right.
Not the type of workout I want to do. Just overall from my career, I hope that people could remember there was highs, there was lows, but there was always never a time where you weren't and anybody was on the court giving 100%. Every game we played hard. Obviously we had a good couple runs and we had a stretch, a couple stretches where we, weren't so hot, but it's not like any of us ever gave up. And that's, I think, one of the biggest things, we had as players, but, as a staff, they wouldn't allow that to happen, right? They pushed us hard every day. They stuck with us. They were confident in us at all times, kind of what Paul said earlier. So, from my 5 years, that was one of the biggest things I learned from them. But I hope that, fans or viewers just would remember.
I was going to say, I can't remember where we were record-wise. I know we had a pretty strong non-conference schedule that year and had some success, but we hit a rough patch during the regular season. I remember, I think it was after we played at maybe Missouri State. We had lost at Missouri State, and we were in that locker room. And it was a bad feeling because we knew we kind of were going to have to win out to even have a chance to go to the NCAA tournament. We're going to have to win the conference tournament and things like that. But I'd say just kind of the relentless pursuit, to kind of echo what Klint is saying. Like, we could have thrown in the towel at any point after that and just said kind of this season's a wash. We did some good things, had some good wins, but stuff didn't go our way. But we never threw in the towel. Came back to work, came back to practice the next day, tried to get a little bit better that day. And by the end of the season, we were playing some really good basketball. And you saw that in the conference tournament. Individuals stepped up and had, big tournaments. Klint obviously being one of them. Wes hit some big shots. Bo, Jeremy. So we did a lot of good things. And then to get into that NCAA tournament and make a little run, obviously come up a little bit short than where we wanted to be, but we never threw the towel in. We never did. And I would hope Panther fans would appreciate that and remember that it wasn't obviously just the guys playing, but the staff the same way. All those guys came to practice every day with a smile on their face and a goal to get a little bit better. So,
I'll add something in there too. I think one of the biggest things you'll remember, obviously those plays and that type of thing. But, what I remember is going to the OP for, we had fundraisers for the Boys and Girls Clubs. We had other things go on, and you all didn't hesitate to show up. You all didn't hesitate to grab that Sharpie and sign my grandson's autograph on a piece of paper, put your autograph on. I mean, you all just were out in the community. You were visible, and you were responsible young men who were great role models for future athletes and future kids coming up to hopefully be Panthers. So I guess I appreciate that a lot about you guys, and you were always visible and gave whatever you could whenever you could. So I thank you from Panther Nation as well for showing up and doing what you guys did.
Appreciate that.
Thank you very much.
So Paul, if you guys make the finals, and if it goes to a game 7, so I won't put you on the spot for game 1, but if it goes to game 7, would you arrange for tickets and travel for the other 3 of us to attend that game?
Yeah, come on. I got you guys. Game 7 of the finals. I got you guys.
Great.
You heard it here.
Yeah, you heard it here first.
Hey, before we let you go, one last question for you, and that's going to be, you obviously played at UNI for a long time. And so what is one thing that the coaching staff taught you then that you are now using now in your careers?
I would say for me, it was the kind of the constant workman's approach, just your consistency with that. Your consistency to get work done at a high level. Obviously we weren't in those coaches meetings. We don't know exactly what they were talking about, what the work was, but they were working because they came to practice every day, organized with a plan of how we were going to improve that day, of how we were going to beat the next team we were playing, the things we needed to work on, the things we were doing well. So I would say just that consistency I've really carried with me. And I think it's really helped me to propel me in my career to, continue growing as well.
I'd say, there was a lot of things that obviously I learned from the staff, but one of the bigger things I think, and Paul, you might remember this, but Panther time. So anytime like something was at 7, we had to be there at 6:45, 15 minutes early. If you're not early, you're late. So, I've kind of carried that with me since then. Whether it's, we got to be at the gym or practice at 11, be at the gym sometime between, 6:30 or 7. Like I'm always trying to be the first one there, trying to be, early, not just on time. That was one of the things that, I don't know, I guess doing it every day, it was just kind of instilled in my brain that that's just kind of how life works. And I think that can attest just to who our staff was and what they were trying to instill in us. So there's I could go down a list, and I'm sure Paul could too, about, everything we learned, basketball wise. But that was one of the things that doesn't really have anything to do with basketball. Just has to do with who you are as a person. And I think that's one of the more important things that I learned from them.
Chuck, once again, we just proved the point. There's a couple of young men out there that are great Panther fans, great Panther ex-Panthers, but better yet, they're just good people. And we get to talk to a lot of you guys, and it's fun. It's fun to have you guys on the show and get to listen to what you're doing today. So we appreciate you joining us. Thank you very much.
We appreciate you guys having us.
Everyone knows Randy and I have a big heart for nonprofits and schools in our area. This time around, we're doing something a little bit different. Instead of talking to a nonprofit or school, we're happen to be working with a group that works with nonprofits and schools. Can we have a big drum roll, please? That was, wow, Randy, that was.
Was that better, Jeff?
And they're even your friends too, but okay. Great drum roll, Nick and Kayla, with a welcome like that. Where else could you possibly go? From Greener Shepherd, thanks for joining us, guys.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thank you.
So maybe to help us out, what do you guys do, and how do you help people implement what you do into their lives?
Perfect. So Nick and I are both former school teachers, and so we taught collectively over 20 years within the state of Iowa. And our goal is to help people empower themselves. We want to help kids become healthier and happier. And we want to say the same thing with the teachers, the adults, the parents that empower that model to the kids as well. So our goal is really to create a healthier environment in the Cedar Valley throughout the state of Iowa for kids to flourish and to thrive. And when they thrive, then everyone thrives as well.
Talk to us a little bit about maybe kind of the physical and maybe the mental struggles that some of our student athletes might have, kids in the classroom might have, that type of thing.
I'll elaborate on a few. Kayla can run off with some of them. Some of the main stressors: pressure, for sure, that they put on themselves, that the parents put on them, the coaches put on them, teammates. Big one. Stress, that can kind of fall under the pressure aspect. But then looking at it from a more physical standpoint, some of the physical stressors that people are struggles that they have is prioritizing eating healthy in a world where we're surrounded by that. We want to have great performance, but if we're not fueling our body correctly, we're not going to have that. Same thing with hydration. Some of these fundamental basic components to true health are being put to the wayside in lieu of supplementations or other aspects of health. So those are like two huge ones from a physical standpoint. The things that you put into your body are either working for you or they're working against you. And then if you're not hydrating well, like that's going to lead to off or on the field lack of performance. And then Kayla can definitely dive in and talk about the pressure and the stress and the language, how that plays a role.
Yeah, I did a couple of workshops for UNI athletes earlier this semester. And a lot of the topics that they had that they wanted to discuss was, how do I handle pressure on and off the court? How do I set goals effectively for my team? Like, what even are my strengths? And, in one workshop, a group of student athletes were unsure even how to identify what their strengths are, because they hear and they focus so much on the things that they need to improve and do better that they forget the strengths, the qualities that they bring to the team. So keeping that at the forefront for them, so they know, okay, these are the things that I do well, and these are the things I can improve on. Because that stress and pressure is not specific just to student athletes. So when you get into the workforce, you're going to face stress and pressure as well. And how can you learn how to navigate that? Sports is a great vehicle for kids to learn, and anyone to learn how to navigate the stress and pressure that you're going to experience later in life. And if you can learn how to navigate it with a little more finesse and a little more fun, it's going to benefit you as you get older. We all know adults in our own lives that are very stressed and they're burned out, they're under a lot of pressure, and they're still learning how to navigate that. And if we can learn that in a high stress environment, such as collegiate athletes or high school sports, or even some elementary sports can be very stressful for the kids because there's so much pressure to perform and do well. And they're learning how to play the game, and they're learning how all these skills that empowering them to talk to themselves better, to focus on their own strengths, to sleep, get more sleep at night, to eat better foods is going to help them as they get older.
Interesting topic there. So you bring up a point. So now we have, especially in youth sports, right? We have adults who probably don't have it all figured out yet, maybe living their life a little bit through their athlete or their young boy or girl, and trying to coach then young individuals who have all this stress, trying to be good, trying to look good for mom and dad, for grandpa and grandma, that type of thing. So, say a couple words maybe to like coaches who are trying to mold these young athletes to be good citizens as well as good athletes.
Yeah, there's so much that can be learned from an athletic career, from an athletic standpoint. And if you can handle those stresses better, it's going to be beneficial to you. And a lot of those young kids are looking up to the people in the stands. They're looking to their coaches as role models. And if those role models are so stressed and are yelling and shouting with the best of intentions, I'm sure, right? They want the kids to perform better and they want the kids to be more successful. And if it's not received that way by the kids, and if they see it consistently as negative feedback, these are all the things that I do poorly, it's going to impact their sense of identity, how they see themselves, right? Like, Randy, imagine if you would have listened. Did you have a voice in your head at all? Or did you ever have any thoughts like, man, maybe I'm not very good at these sports, or, maybe I should quit? Did you ever doubt yourself at all as a collegiate athlete?
Right. So I was the youngest of 5 boys. So I doubted myself a lot when I was a kid because I got beat up and never won a game for a very long time.
So imagine if you would have stayed in that mindset, doubting yourself, would you have been successful at UNI? Like, would you have even made it onto the court?
Right. Probably not. That is correct.
Yeah. So we think about all those thoughts that are going through the kids' heads, that coaches, athletes have the best of intentions. And if the kids aren't able to have enough confidence in themselves to be like, okay, I know I can do this, I know I'm going to be successful, persevere through it, they're going to give up. And there's going to be a lot of athletic careers that are cut short, or they don't even happen because they doubt themselves.
So let me ask you this, is what does a session look like when you do spend time with either a school or a set of athletes or a team?
Yeah, so we like to come at it from our through line is as above, so below. What's going on in your body is going to affect the psychology. What's going on in the psychology is going to affect the physiology of your body. So we like to come at it from the mental, the emotional, and the physical. Obviously, not everything's going to resonate with every single person at that point in time or that stage in their life. So what they can do is through our presentations, through our workshops, they can grab these items that are going to work with them right away and put them into practice. It's the repetition, as Randy, you know, like how many shots have you taken in your lifetime? It's
Right.
the repetition, getting that skill set underneath your belt and treating that. That's what's going to move them forward.
We talk a lot about it as like practical mindset, because you go back to the sports, like the analogy that Nick said, you know, you need to get the reps in, you need to be able to practice it on a daily basis. It can't be something that, oh, we're going to go sit in this presentation and learn about it on this, you know, for an hour, and then somehow it's going to affect our entire season and we're going to be completely better. That's a great idea. And it doesn't happen in practice, right? It has to be small tweaks that you can make to your conversation, to your language, your, you know, with yourself. When you feel like you're under a lot of pressure, you know, how can you switch some of your words in order to see things possibly differently, or to give yourself another option with what you want to do? And it's those practical small tweaks and that make big changes. You know, Nick always uses the analogy that if a plane is traveling from here to California, and if you change the direction by 1 degree, you're going to end up in a different location. You know, and if we think about those same small tweaks that we can each make to our own lives, or that if you make with your own conversation, if you're a coach, right, with the kids, if kids can see themselves slightly differently, it's going to change their trajectory. And think about how malleable kids are with their own sense of identity, how they see themselves, right? If a parent, a big person, tells me this is who I am, then this must be who I am. And that can either be a good thing or it can be a bad thing. We all are impacted by what people say. You know, the phrase "sticks and stones may break my bones and words will never hurt me." That's so false, because we've all been hurt by comments that other people have said with the best of intentions.
I know my feelings are hurt throughout this conversation, because every time you talk about, you know, stellar athletes, you keep on saying, well, Randy, as you know. No one ever says, Chuck, as you know. My goodness. Well, let me ask you this final question, and that is, how could people learn more about what you do and get connected with you?
Yeah, they can email us, greenershepherd@gmail.com. And to find out more information, we love to sit down and talk with people to find out exactly what it is that they want, so we can cater our services to their specific audience, to their specific people that they want to serve. You can also check us out at greenershepherd.com, and that is geared right now towards schools and businesses, and it's currently being reworked.
Well, thank you guys for joining us. We appreciate it. This is obviously a different angle for us. We're driving the lane, and I think it's good. I think it's going to be a win-win for you guys. I've taken one of your workshops, and I really appreciated the hour that I got to spend with you all and everybody else in the classroom. And you know, even at 59 years of age, I did learn a couple things about myself and things that need to change, and I appreciate that.
This brings us to the part of the week that everyone's been waiting for, the Financial Architect's Quote of the Week.
Quote of the week, here it is. We cannot force someone to hear a message they are not ready to receive, but we must never underestimate the power of planting a seed.
You know, I bet you once or twice in life, when it comes to playing at a even a team like you and I, or any team that as a player, it's probably hard to get a message or two from you're used to being the star. Now you go to a team and it's hard to get a message or two. What advice would you have for players as they enter a college program in regard to getting advice from a coaching staff?
Wow. Yeah, great question. So obviously they have recruited you to come to the next level, right? From high school to the next level, whatever that is, whether it's a junior college, whether it's Division 1, 2, 3, whatever it might be, because you're coachable, right? They've done a little background check on you. They figured out that you're a coachable student athlete and not just a superstar. And so what I would recommend as well is that they've recruited you for a reason, because they think they can coach you. But number two, I think you want to latch on to maybe an upperclassman and follow their role model, especially a successful upperclassman, and follow their role model, what they've done that's worked for them. If they get up at 5 a.m. and they go shoot hoops every day, whatever that might be, they go to the weight room. So I think latching on to someone that is already successful, and they will give you the role model on how to just become a better student athlete and possibly a superstar at that university.
There you go. Awesome. Great quote, Randy. As always, good for you, good for me, and good for everybody. It's time to say goodbye from Randy and Chuck for the entire season. Enter the closing music.